The desert wind howled like a distant lament, whipping sand across the cracked asphalt of Route 17, where the sun dipped low, painting the horizon in blood-red streaks. In the shadow of a rusted billboard advertising forgotten motels, a little girl no older than 7 huddled against the remnants of an old tire, her small frame trembling under a threadbare blanket. Tears carved clean paths through the dust on her cheeks, and her whimpers cut through the evening hush like shards of glass. She was alone, abandoned on the edge of nowhere, the kind of forsaken stretch where coyotes prowled and semis thundered past without a glance. Her name was Lily, though no one out here knew it yet, and the fear in her eyes spoke of a nightmare that had already stolen her voice. Signs of rough handling lingered in the way she clutched her arm, as if guarding against invisible blows. From the east, the growl of engines shattered the silence, a low rumble building like thunder on the approach. It wasn't just one bike, it was a formation, precise and unyielding, cutting through the dusk like a blade. Ethan Hawk Harlan rode at the front, his weathered leather jacket scarred from years of road and regret, the iron promise patch gleaming faintly on his sleeve. At 45, Hawk was a ghost of the man he'd been, a veteran marked by the sands of distant wars, his left hand bearing a silver ring etched with a simple vow: brothers forever. He'd buried that past deep, trading battlefields for Blacktop, leading his crew of misfits through dusty runs and midnight vigils. But tonight, something pulled at him, an old ache he couldn't name, urging the convoy faster as they crested the rise. The bike slowed, tires crunching gravel, and Hawk killed his engine first. The girl looked up, wide-eyed, as the pack encircled her like silent guardians, 20 strong, engines ticking in the cooling air, the scent of hot metal and exhaust mingling with the dry earth. Hawk dismounted, his boots heavy on the ground, and approached slowly, his shadow stretching long across her. She flinched at first, but then her gaze locked on his hand, on the ring that caught the last rays of sun. Her lips parted, a whisper escaping like a secret too heavy to hold. Grandpa said you'd step on this. The promise ring, he'd know you by it. Hawk froze, the words hitting him like a punch to the gut. He couldn't speak, his throat tightened around memories he'd locked away. That ring wasn't just metal. It was a pact from 30 years ago, sworn in a foxhole with a brother-in-arms named Elias, Lily's grandfather, a promise to watch over his kin if the worst came. Elias had fallen in a skirmish overseas, his last letter begging Hawk to step up if I don't make it home. Hawk had walked away, haunted, letting the guilt fester into silence. Until now. The crew watched, engines idling low, as Hawk knelt to her level, the wind tugging at his salt and pepper hair. How do you know that?" he finally rasped, his voice gravel from disuse. Lily's eyes, the color of storm clouds, searched his face. "He showed me pictures. Said if I ever got lost, a man with the hawk eyes, and the ring would come. The bad men took me from the trailer park, said Mama owed them, but I ran when they stopped for gas." Her small hand reached out, tracing the engraving without fear now, as if it were a talisman pulling her from the abyss. Hawk's mind reeled, Elias's daughter, his own blood, caught in the web of debts and shadows that haunted their world. The crew shifted uneasily. These weren't just riders, they were the chosen family Hawk had forged from the wreckage of his life, bound by codes older than the roads they rode. As the sun vanished, plunging the scene into twilight's embrace, Hawk lifted Lily gently onto his bike, her blanket draped like a cape. The touch ignited something dormant in him, a spark of the man who'd once charged into fire for a brother. "We're getting you home," he murmured, more to himself than her. But home wasn't just a place. It was unfinished business, a promise clawing its way back from the grave. The convoy reformed, lights piercing the dark like stars in formation, roaring south toward the faint glow of a town called Dusthaven. Hawk rode with Lily's arms wrapped tight around his waist, her whisper echoing in his ears. "He said you'd fix it." The road ahead twisted like fate itself, and for the first time in years, Hawk felt the weight of honor settling not as a burden, but as a beacon. Back in Dusthaven, the trailer park lights flickered like dying fireflies against the night sky. Hawk's mind raced ahead, piecing together fragments of Elias's legacy. The old man had spoken of a life rebuilt after the war, a wife lost to illness, a daughter scraping by in the shadows of unpaid bills and small-time crooks who preyed on the vulnerable. Lily's mother, Sarah, worked double shifts at the local diner, her hands calloused from serving plates to truckers who never tipped enough. But whispers in the wind carried tales of enforcers circling, men with badges or without, demanding what wasn't theirs. Hawk had steered clear of such entanglements, his crew focused on charity runs and veteran outreaches. But this was personal, a thread pulling him back to the vow he'd nearly forgotten. As they entered the town's outskirts, the air grew thick with the smell of fried onions from the diner and the faint tang of rain on parched soil. Lily pointed shakily toward a cluster of weathered homes, her voice steadier now. "That's where Mama is. But the bad men, they come at night." Hawk nodded, signaling his second-in-command, a burly ex-marine named Marcus, to fan out and secure the perimeter. The bikes peeled off quietly, a symphony of muffled roars, positioning like sentinels. Hawk carried Lily the last stretch, her weight light but her story heavy, each step crunching on gravel that mirrored the fractures in his soul. Sarah burst from the trailer door at the sound of voices, her face a mask of exhaustion cracking into raw panic. "Lily! Oh God, where—" Her words died as she saw Hawk, the ring glinting under the porch light. Recognition dawned slowly, then hit like a storm. "You, Elias's friend, the one from the letters." Tears welled as she scooped Lily into her arms, the reunion a quiet explosion of sobs and whispers. Hawk stood back, the scene unfolding like a frame from a half-remembered dream, the emotional tether of brotherhood pulling taut across decades. But peace was fleeting. From the shadows of the adjacent lot, headlights pierced the night. Two black sedans, unmarked and ominous, rolling in with predatory grace. The enforcers no doubt drawn by the disturbance. Hawk's hand instinctively went to his side, not for a weapon, but for the resolve that had carried him through worse. Marcus and the crew materialized from the dark, a wall of leather and loyalty. "This ends tonight," Hawk said softly to Sarah, his voice steady now. "For Elias, for all of us." The promise, once whispered in a war zone, now thundered in the quiet standoff, binding them in a circle of redemption that no shadow could break. As the sedans idled, engines purring threats, Lily clung to her mother, glancing back at Hawk with eyes full of unspoken trust. The biker who couldn't speak at first now carried the weight of words unsaid, ready to ride into the moral fray. The night air hummed with tension, the first drops of rain pattering like hesitant applause, washing clean the dust of old regrets. This was just the beginning, the call of a forgotten vow echoing into the unknown, where loyalty would forge paths through corruption's veil. The rain began in earnest now, a silver veil slicing through the sodium glow of the trailer park lamps, turning the gravel into a slick mosaic of mud and memory. Hawk stood unmoving, his broad shoulders squared against the downpour, water beading on his leather like tears on stone. The sedan's headlights cut harsh beams across the scene, illuminating Sarah's tear-streaked face as she held Lily close, the girl's small fingers twisting into her mother's shirt. Marcus flanked Hawk, his massive frame a silent bulwark, while the rest of the crew formed a loose semicircle, bikes parked like iron steeds ready for battle. No one drew iron, this wasn't about that. It was about the weight of words, the kind that bound souls across graves and decades. The driver's door of the lead sedan creaked open, and a man stepped out, tall, slick-haired, his suit jacket clinging wetly to his frame. He was the type who wore authority like a second skin, but the flicker in his eyes betrayed the rot beneath. "Evening, folks," he called, his voice oily smooth, carrying over the patter of rain. "Heard there's been some excitement. Little girl wondering, we can sort this out official-like." His gaze slid to Hawk, lingering on the iron promise patch, then to the ring that caught a glint from the headlights. Behind him, two more figures emerged from the vehicles, shadows with purposeful strides, their hands hovering near pockets that suggested more than conversation. Sarah's breath hitched, her arms tightening around Lily. "They're the ones who took her," she whispered fiercely to Hawk, her voice barely audible over the storm. "Said I owed for the truck repair, but it was more, always more. Elias warned me about men like this hiding behind papers and threats." Hawk nodded imperceptibly, the pieces falling into place like gears in an old engine. Elias had written about it in those final letters. Fragments smuggled from the front, debts twisted into chains by locals who blurred the line between law and greed. Hawk had read them once, then burned the pain away in a bottle, but the vow lingered, etched deeper than the ring's inscription. "You're on private property," Hawk said evenly, his tone low and steady, like the rumble of a bike at idle. He stepped forward, rain streaming down his face, masking the storm in his eyes. "Girl's home. Whatever claim you think you have, it ends here." And the man, let's call him Harlan for the irony, though no relation to the blood, chuckled, a sound like gravel under tires. "Private? This town's got rules, biker. Debts don't vanish with a sob story. Mama here's got markers from the shop, the lender, folks who keep the lights on." He gestured vaguely toward the trailers, but his eyes were calculating, weighing the odds against the wall of leather-clad resolve. Lily peeked from behind Sarah, her storm-cloud eyes fixed on Hawk. "Tell them about Grandpa," she murmured, her voice a fragile thread in the downpour. Hawk felt it then, the pull of that promise, not as guilt but as fire. He raised his hand, the ring flashing like a signal flare. This is from a man who gave everything for his word. Elias Kane, you know the name? Served with me, built a life hereafter. His daughter, her kid, doesn't know shadows like you." The words hung heavy, drawing a murmur from the crew. Marcus shifted, his hand on his bike's handle, ready but restrained. Harlan's smile faltered, recognition dawning like a crack in armor. Kane, that washed-up vet, thought he was long gone. He glanced at his companions, who exchanged uneasy looks, the rain amplifying the tension like a swelling score. In the distance, thunder rolled, echoing the unspoken challenge. Hawk pressed on, his voice gaining steel. "Gone, yeah, but his promise ain't. We rode for brothers like him, still do. You want payment? Take it from the corruption that's got this town choking, not from her." It wasn't a threat. It was a line drawn in the mud, moral and unyielding, the kind that invited no cross without consequence. The standoff stretched, seconds feeling like miles on an empty road. Sarah stepped forward, Lily at her side, her chin lifted despite the tremble in her hands. "Elias left me his stories, his strength. This man, Hawk, he's the one Grandpa trusted. You can't just take what's ours, because we can't fight your system." Her words, simple and raw, struck deeper than any roar. Harlan's face twisted, the facade slipping as the crew's presence loomed larger, a testament to loyalty forged in fire. One of the shadows muttered something about backup, but the rain swallowed it, and doubt crept in like fog. Finally, Harlan raised his hands, palms out in mock surrender. All right, no need for drama. We'll review the accounts, family ties and all." It was a retreat, cloaked in bureaucracy, but Hawk saw the fracture, the first chip in the wall of institutional shadow. The sedans reversed slowly, tires spinning in the muck, headlights fading into the night like retreating ghosts. The crew held position until the tail lights vanished, then exhaled as one, the rain easing to a drizzle. Sarah turned to Hawk, gratitude etching lines on her weary face. "You didn't have to, but thank you. Elias would—" "He would," Hawk cut in softly, the words catching on the lump in his throat. He knelt again, eye level with Lily. "Your grandpa was right. I stepped up late, but I'm here now." She nodded solemnly, touching the ring once more, a silent pact renewed. Marcus clapped Hawk's shoulder, his grin broad under the porch light. "Crew's got your back, boss. This ain't over. Those types don't slink away easy." As the night deepened, the trailer park settling into uneasy quiet, Hawk lingered on the steps. Sharing coffee from a chipped mug, Sarah pressed into his hands. The steam rose like unspoken confessions, carrying scents of weak brew and damp earth. She spoke of the years since Elias. The diner shifts, blurring into endless nights, the lenders circling like vultures after a minor fender bender, ballooned into impossible sums. "They twist everything," she said, voice laced with quiet fury. "But you brought hope back." Hawk listened, the ring heavy on his finger, each story weaving tighter the thread of redemption. His crew milled about, checking bikes and sharing nods, a family reassembling in the wake of the storm. Dawn crept in slow, painting the sky in muted greys, the first birdsong piercing the hush. Hawk rose, muscles aching from the vigil, but his spirit lighter, unburdened by the vow's first fulfillment. "We'll stick close," he promised Sarah, the word tasting like truth after so long unspoken. Lily hugged his leg, whispering, "Grandpa's watching." As the convoy fired up, engines humming to life, Hawk mounted his bike, the road ahead calling with purpose. But whispers from the crew hinted at deeper roots, rumors of a network tying those enforcers to higher shadows in Dust Haven's underbelly, corruption that Elias had brushed against in life. The ride south would be more than escort. It would be reckoning, loyalty's engine revving toward justice's horizon. Yet even as they rolled out, Hawk glanced back at the trailer. Sarah's silhouette in the doorway, a beacon in the growing light. The promise wasn't just for Elias anymore. It was for the living, the chosen kin who rode through rain and regret. The desert stretched wide, whispering of trials to come. But for now the ring gleamed untarnished, a symbol of honor reclaiming its due. The sun climbed higher over Dust Haven, casting long shadows from the skeletal remains of abandoned oil derricks that dotted the outskirts like forgotten sentinels. Hawk led the convoy at a measured pace, the rumble of engines a steady heartbeat against the vast expanse of scrubland, where heat waves danced off the asphalt like mirages of unresolved pasts. Lily rode pillion behind Sarah on one of the spare bikes, her small arms wrapped securely around her mother's waist, the wind tugging at the edges of the blanket still draped over them. Hawk glanced back occasionally, his hawk-sharp eyes scanning for tails, but the road behind stretched empty, save for the faint swirl of dust settling in their wake. Marcus rode flank, his massive frame cutting through the air like a prow, while the rest of the Iron Promise crew strung out in formation, 15 riders now. The others peeled off to watch the trailer park, a web of loyalty ensuring no shadows crept back unannounced. They'd aimed for the old courthouse in the heart of town, a squat brick building with peeling paint and a clock tower that hadn't chimed right since the war years. Elias had mentioned it in his letters, a place where justice was supposed to be served, but more often doled out like bad cards in a rigged game. Hawk's mind churned with fragments of those words, pieced together from memory. "Watch the suits in Dust Haven, brother. They wear the law like a mask, but underneath it's all about keeping the small folk down." The ring on his finger felt warmer now, as if absorbing the sun's fire, a reminder that this ride wasn't just escort duty, it was a reckoning, pulling him deeper into the vow he'd let gather dust for too long. Sarah had insisted on coming along, her face set with a determination that echoed Elias's unyielding spirit. "I need to face them," she'd said over that dawn coffee, her voice steady despite the shadows under her eyes. For Lily, for what they tried to take. Hawk hadn't argued. In her, he saw the quiet strength of the man who'd saved his life in a foxhole, trading a bullet for brotherhood. As they pulled into the courthouse lot, the bikes lined up like a declaration, engines cutting off in unison to leave a ringing silence, broken only by the distant call of a hawk wheeling overhead. Townsfolk paused in their morning routines, a mechanic wiping grease from his hands, a waitress from the diner crossing the street, eyes widening at the sight of the leather-clad arrivals, whispers rippling like wind through dry grass. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the scent of aged paper and floor polish, the kind that clung to your clothes long after you left. The clerk's office was a narrow room lined with filing cabinets that sagged under years of neglect, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like trapped insects. Sarah approached the counter first, Lily clutching her hand, while Hawk and Marcus loomed in the doorway, their presence a subtle pressure that made the elderly attendant glance up nervously. "We're here about the debts on record for Sarah Kane," Sarah said, her tone even, pulling a crumpled notice from her pocket, the one that had started it all, a simple repair bill twisted into a noose by interest and threats. The clerk, a wiry man named Ellis with spectacles perched on a beak-like nose, fumbled through drawers, his fingers trembling slightly under the weight of unspoken scrutiny. "Kane, you say? Ah, yes, here it is. Overdue since last harvest. The lender's firm, Midland Securities, has liens, can't just wave it away." He slid the file across, but his eyes darted to Hawk, lingering on the ring that glinted under the harsh light. Hawk stepped forward, leaning on the counter just enough to cast his shadow over the papers. "Midland, never heard of 'em being fair. What's the real story here? Elias Kane's family doesn't owe ghosts." Ellis swallowed, adjusting his glasses, the room's hum amplifying the tension like a held breath. Outside, the crew waited, boots scuffing gravel, their low conversations a murmur of solidarity. Lily tugged at Sarah's sleeve, whispering, "Is this where Grandpa fought his fights?" Sarah knelt briefly, brushing a strand of hair from the girl's face. "Something like that, sweetie, but now we have help." The words carried a weight that settled over Hawk, stirring the embers of redemption he'd long ignored. He'd walked away from Elias's plea once, burying the guilt under miles of highway, but here in this dim chamber of faded ideals, the promise demanded more than memory. It required action. As Ellis droned on about statutes and balances, Hawk's gaze sharpened on a name stamped at the bottom. Harlan Investigations, the same slick operator from the night before. It wasn't coincidence, it was a thread in a larger tapestry of control, where small debts fed a machine that crushed the vulnerable under the guise of order. "This Harlan," Hawk said quietly, his voice cutting through the clerk's recitation like a blade through fog. "He the one calling shots? Ties to the sheriff's office, maybe?" Ellis froze, his Adam's apple bobbing. I couldn't say, but folks talk. Says the town needs protection from folks like you. Outsiders, stirring trouble." The accusation hung there, a spark to dry tinder. Marcus growled low from the door, but Hawk raised a hand, steadying the moment. This wasn't about fists. It was the slow unraveling of corruption's veil, justice served through truth rather than thunder. Sarah's eyes met Hawk's, a silent exchange of resolve, the family chosen in that glance stronger than blood. "Elias trusted you," she said softly, as if reading his thoughts. "He said a man's word is the only law that lasts." The ring burned against his skin, Elias's echo urging him forward. They left the courthouse with copies of the files clutched in Sarah's hand, the midday sun beating down as they remounted. But the victory felt hollow. Ellis's parting words lingered like a warning. Harlan don't like loose ends. The convoy rolled out toward the diner's edge of town, where Sarah had arranged a quiet meet with an old contact of Elias's, a retired deputy named Thomas, who might know the undercurrents. The road wound through sun-baked lots, the scent of sagebrush rising sharp, engines purring with purpose. Lily pointed out faded signs, chattering about Grandpa's tales of the desert as a place of hidden treasures, her innocence a balm against the gathering storm. At the diner, a weathered sign creaked in the breeze, promising pie and coffee but delivering only truths long buried. Thomas waited in a corner booth, his face lined like cracked leather, a veteran of local skirmishes who'd traded his badge for a stool after seeing too much rot. He nodded to Hawk as they entered, the bell above the door tinkling like a cautious herald. "Heard you rode in last night. Elias's shadow follows you still." Over steaming mugs he laid it out plain. Harlan's network ran deep, siphoning from the town's veins, debts inflated, property seized, all under a banner of community stability. "Your friend's girl got caught in it after that truck mishap, but it's bigger. Ties to the council, even the bank. They paint riders like you as the villains to keep eyes off their game." Hawk absorbed it, the coffee bitter on his tongue, mirroring the taste of betrayal. Lily colored quietly at the table's edge, her crayon scratching out a crude hawk with a shining ring, a child's vision of the guardian her grandpa promised. Sarah listened, her hand on Lily's shoulder, the weight of legacy pressing down. Marcus paced outside, keeping watch, his loyalty a constant hum. "We expose it," Hawk said finally, the words solidifying like steel in fire. "Not with noise, but proof. For Elias, for the promises we keep." As the sun arced toward afternoon, the diner emptied, leaving them in a pocket of resolve. Thomas slid a worn ledger across, pilfered records hinting at the web's heart. A meeting that night at the old mill on the river's bend. Hawk pocketed it, the ring catching the light once more, a beacon in the moral dusk. The crew gathered as they stepped out, bikes gleaming under the relentless sky, ready to weave through the threads of deceit. Redemption wasn't a straight road, it twisted like the river ahead, demanding sacrifice and silence in equal measure. But with Lily's trusting gaze and Sarah's quiet nod, Hawk felt the vow breathe life anew, propelling them toward the shadows where justice waited, patient and unyielding. The engines roared to life, a chorus of honor echoing across the parched land, carrying them deeper into the fray. The afternoon sun hung heavy over Dusthaven, turning the air into a shimmering haze that blurred the line between earth and sky. Hawk guided the convoy toward the river's bend, the old mill looming on the horizon like a relic from a forgotten era, its weathered silos and rusted silos standing sentinel against the encroaching scrub. The engines thrummed low, a purposeful cadence that matched the steady pulse in Hawk's veins. The ledger tucked secure in his jacket like a loaded secret. Sarah rode close behind, Lily's laughter occasionally cutting through the wind, a fragile melody amid the gathering tension. Marcus scouted ahead on his scout bike, his silhouette slicing through the heat waves, while the crew tightened formation, their leathers creaking with each twist of the throttle. The scent of sun-baked sage mingled with the faint metallic tang of the river, drawing them inexorably toward the heart of the shadows. As they neared the mill, the road narrowed to a gravel path, choked with weeds, the tires crunching softly under the weight of resolve. Hawk signaled a halt at the tree line, where the underbrush provided cover, the bikes easing to a stop in a symphony of settling dust. He dismounted first, boots sinking into the soft earth, and motioned for the others to fan out, silent watchers in the fading light. Sarah lifted Lily down, the girl's eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and the lingering echo of fear, her small hand slipping into her mother's. "Is this Grandpa's treasure spot?" she asked, voice hushed, as if the words might summon ghosts. Sarah managed to smile, though worry etched her features. Close enough, honey. We're here to find the truth he always chased. Hawk led the way on foot, the group moving like shadows through the tall grass, the river's murmur growing louder, a constant undercurrent to their steps. The mill's entrance yawned dark and inviting, vines clawing at the frame like desperate fingers. Inside, the air was cooler, thick with the musty scent of damp wood and forgotten machinery, shafts of sunlight piercing the gloom like hesitant spotlights. They positioned themselves in the rafters and alcoves, breaths held, the crew's loyalty a tangible force binding them in the dimness. Thomas had marked the time. Dusk, when the web spiders would spin their threads unchecked. Hawk's hand brushed the ring, its cool metal grounding him, Elias's voice a whisper in his mind. Step up, brother, for the ones who can't. The first arrivals came as the sun dipped, casting elongated shadows across the mill floor. 2 sedans pulled up outside, doors slamming with authoritative finality, followed by the low growl of a truck that spoke of heavier intentions. Harlan emerged first, his suit rumpled now without the rain's excuse, flanked by the same shadows from the night before and a new face. A portly man in a crisp shirt, his tie loosened like a noose half-tied. They carried briefcases and rolled blueprints, settling around a makeshift table of crates, the clink of bottles punctuating their murmurs. Hawk watched from above, his hawk eyes narrowing as snippets of conversation drifted up like smoke. "Debts are piling, Harlan," the portly one said, voice oily with calculation. "That Kane widow's just the start. Push the liens, seize the trailer, funds for the council's projects." Harlan nodded, lighting a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating his calculating gaze. "Riders complicate it. Iron promise, they're stirring the pot, but we paint 'em as threats. Sheriff owes us. Make it stick." The words landed like blows, each one weaving tighter the tapestry of corruption Elias had glimpsed. Sarah, hidden nearby, clenched her fists, Lily's head against her shoulder to muffle any sound. The girls' trust in Hawk a quiet anchor. As the meeting deepened, voices rising with the stakes, Hawk signaled Marcus, a subtle nod, and the second in command slipped out to alert the crew positioned at the perimeter. No rush, no chaos. This was the slow burn of justice, truth as the weapon sharper than steel. Harlan unrolled a map, pointing to parcels marked in red, the trailer park, the diner, even the courthouse lot, circles of control tightening like a vice. "Midland's cut is secure, but we need the riders gone. Accident on Route 17, maybe. Clean." The casual cruelty hung in the air, a moral poison that ignited something fierce in Hawk's chest. The promise wasn't just protection, it was dismantling the chains that bound the vulnerable, honor-demanding exposure over vengeance. They waited until the deal was sealed, a briefcase exchanged, hands shaken in the flickering lantern light, before making their move. Hawk descended first, boots thudding softly on the stairs, emerging into the open like a spectre from the rafters. The crew followed, a wall of quiet determination, flashlights clicking on to bathe the scene in stark revelation. "Evening, gentlemen," Hawk said, his voice steady as the river's flow, the ledger held aloft like evidence in a courtroom of conscience. Harlan spun, face paling under the beams, his cigarette dropping to smoulder on the floor. "You... how?" But words failed him. The web's architect caught in his own snare. Sarah stepped forward, Lily at her side, the girl's presence a poignant shield. "This ends the lies," she declared, her tone echoing Elias's unyielding spirit. "For my father, for everyone you've squeezed dry." The portly man stammered protests, but Marcus loomed close, phone in hand already recording, the crew's lights capturing every flicker of guilt. Harlan lunged for the map, but Hawk blocked him effortlessly, the ring glinting like a judge's gavel. "We have names, dates, your protection racket." Elias saw it coming, said a man's word outlasts any paper you forge. The air thickened with confrontation, not of fists, but of fractured facades, the moral weight pressing down until cracks appeared. Panic rippled through them. One shadow bolted for the door, only to find two crew members barring the way, their stance unyielding but hands empty. "Call your sheriff," Hawk continued, voice low and inexorable. "Tell him the truth's riding out tonight. No more shadows on the Canes, or anyone else." Harlan's eyes darted, calculating escape, but the ledger's pages rustled open under a light, revealing ledgers of inflated debts, kickbacks traced to town hall. The portly one slumped against a crate, muttering about mistakes, while the truck's driver hesitated outside, engine idling in doubt. In the standoff's hush, Lily whispered to Hawk, "Grandpa said you'd shine the light." Her words, innocent and profound, sealed the moment, redemption flowing like the river beyond. Harlan finally raised his hands, the fight draining from him like water through sieve. "Fine, we back off the widow, but this town's bigger than—" "Not anymore," Hawk cut in. The promise is fire burning bright. They gathered the evidence, maps, cases, recordings, leaving the men to their unraveling night, the crew escorting Sarah and Lily back to the bikes under a canopy of emerging stars. As they rode away, the mill shrinking in the mirrors, the air cooled with the promise of night, carrying scents of wet stone and liberation. Hawk felt the vow settle deeper, not as burden but as legacy, binding the chosen family in threads of loyalty unbreakable. But whispers from Thomas earlier hinted at roots deeper still, council ties that wouldn't sever easy. The road curved toward Dusthaven's lights, justice's first victory, a spark illuminating paths yet to be forged. Marcus rode up beside Hawk, nodding approval. "For Elias," he said simply. Hawk gripped the throttle tighter, the ring a steady pulse, propelling them forward into the moral dawn. Back at the trailer, under the porch light's warm glow, Sarah hugged Lily close, gratitude shining in her eyes. "You kept your word," she said to Hawk, voice thick with emotion. He nodded, words unnecessary now, the silence speaking volumes of honor reclaimed. The crew dispersed to watches, engines fading into the night, but the bond lingered, a family forged in fire and fidelity. Yet as Hawk stared into the dark, he knew the fray wasn't over. Shadows lingered, demanding one more ride toward truth's unyielding horizon. If this chapter's tension has you gripping the edge, smash that like button. It fuels these rides through redemption's dust. The moon hung low over Dusthaven, a silver sickle slicing through the veil of night, casting ethereal glows on the trailer park's rusted roofs. Hawk sat on the porch steps, the wood creaking under his weight like an old friend's sigh, a half-smoked cigarette forgotten between his fingers. The air carried the crisp bite of cooling earth, mingled with the faint, acrid whisper of exhaust from the crew's lingering bikes parked in a vigilant arc. Sarah had tucked Lily inside, the girl's soft breathing a rhythmic anchor through the thin walls, but sleep eluded Hawk. The ledger burned in his jacket pocket, its pages heavy with the ink of deceit. Names, sums, connections that snaked from Harlan's mill to the very heart of the town's facade. Elias's voice echoed in the quiet, not as accusation, but as a steady call. "Finish it, brother, for the light we fought to keep." Marcus approached from the shadows, his boots scuffing gravel softly, a thermos of black coffee extended like a peace offering. Crews settled, 2 on perimeter, 3 circling the outskirts. Thomas radioed, says the sheriff's office lit up like a flare after your little chat at the mill. Harlan's scrambling, but he's got pull. Hawk took the thermos, the warmth seeping through the metal, chasing the chill that had nothing to do with the night. He nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon where distant headlights flickered like wary eyes. Pull means nothing if we cut the strings. Tomorrow, we take it to the council, public, no more hiding in ledgers. Marcus grunted approval, settling beside him, the two men a bastion of scarred resolve, their silence woven with the unbreakable threads of chosen brotherhood. Inside, Sarah paced the small living room, the floorboards groaning under her steps, Lily's crayon drawing of the Hawk Ring Guardian taped to the fridge like a talisman. The evidence Hawk had shared weighed on her, pages detailing how her father's modest life had been ensnared post-war, debts inflated by the same hands that now threatened her own. Elias always said the town's justice was a mirage, she murmured to herself, tracing a finger over a faded photo of her father in uniform, his smile defiant against the desert backdrop. The ring story had pulled Hawk back, but it ignited her own fire, a daughter's duty to reclaim what corruption had stolen. Lily stirred in her sleep, whispering Grandpa's promise, and Sarah knelt, brushing the girl's hair, the moment a quiet vow of her own, no more running. Dawn broke with a hesitant blush, painting the sky in strokes of rose and gold, the first rays glinting off dew-kissed chrome as the convoy stirred to life. Hawk mounted his bike, the engine's growl a awakening roar that rippled through the park, drawing nods from neighbors who'd heard whispers of the night's upheaval. Sarah emerged with Lily bundled in a fresh jacket, the girl's eyes bright with the adventure's glow, unscarred by the shadows they'd pierced. "We're with you," Sarah said, climbing onto the spare ride with Lily, secure behind. The crew fell in, 15 strong now, augmented by a few local veterans Thomas had rallied, men with their own ghosts, drawn by tales of Elias's unyielding honor. The formation rolled out, a thunderous procession cutting through the morning mist, tires humming over asphalt that seemed to pulse with anticipation. The town square awaited, a dusty plaza ringed by the council hall, a squat edifice of faded brick and iron-barred windows, its flag limp in the still air. They arrived as the clock struck 9, engines cutting off in a unified hush that echoed like a held breath. Townsfolk gathered instinctively, drawn by the spectacle. The mechanic from yesterday, the diner waitress with her apron still tied, whispers building like a swelling score. Hawk dismounted, ledger in hand, his leather creaking as he strode toward the hall steps, Sarah and Lily at his side, Marcus and the crew forming a respectful cordon. The doors swung open under his push, revealing a chamber of polished wood and stern portraits, where council members, 5 greying figures in ill-fitting suits, huddled at a long table, Harlan lurking in the corner like a cornered fox. "You've got company!" Hawk announced, his voice carrying clear and resonant, the ring catching the light from a high window like a spotlight on truth. Gasps rippled from the assembled locals, spilling in behind, the air thick with the scent of oiled floors and brewing storm. Harlan bolted upright, face ashen, but the council chair, a wiry woman named Evelyn with sharp eyes, rapped her gavel. "This better be official, Harlan, or whatever this rider circus is." Hawk laid the ledger open, pages fanning like accusations, Sarah stepping forward to point at the entries, twisting her debts into chains. "It's about families like mine," she said, voice steady, Lily's hand in hers a symbol of stakes beyond numbers. "My father, Elias Kane, built this town with his service. You let men like him bleed it dry." Murmurs swelled as Thomas entered, his retired badge glinting, corroborating with a folder of his own, witness statements from years past, echoes of Elias's warnings ignored. The council shifted uneasily, eyes darting to Harlan, whose oily facade cracked under the onslaught. "Lies, fabrications from outsiders," he sputtered, but Hawk's gaze pinned him, the promise's weight in every word. "Outsiders? We're the ones who rode for men like Elias, who kept words when wars ended. This web ends today. Liens lifted, accounts cleared, for the Kanes and every soul you've squeezed." The room tensed, a moral precipice. As Evelyn scanned the evidence, her face hardening, not in anger but revelation. If this holds, God help us all. Outside, the square filled, the crew's presence a quiet force, engines idling low like patient guardians. Lily tugged Hawk's sleeve, whispering, "You're stepping on it now," like Grandpa said. He knelt, the world narrowing to her trusting eyes, redemption flooding through him like sunlight breaking clouds. No violence marred the air. Instead, justice unfolded in confessions, coaxed by truth's unrelenting light. Harlan slumped, allies peeling away as the council voted. Unanimous, the corruption's veil torn. Cheers erupted faintly from the crowd, a cathartic release. The scent of fresh-baked bread from a nearby stall, wafting in like hope renewed. As the meeting dissolved, Hawk led the way out, the group emerging into midday sun that warmed like absolution. Sarah hugged him fiercely, tears mingling with laughter, Lily dancing between them. "You fixed it," the girl beamed, and Hawk finally spoke the words he'd choked on before. "We all did, for family." Marcus clapped backs, the crew exchanging nods of quiet triumph, their chosen bonds forged stronger in the fire. But as they mounted up, a distant siren wailed. The sheriff's arrival, too late to mend, but in time to witness the shift. Hawk rode at the fore, the road ahead clear, the ring a steady gleam, carrying them toward horizons where promises bloomed into legacies unbroken. The desert wind whispered approval, carrying scents of sage and freedom, the phrase embers cooling into enduring light. The desert sun beat down on the town square like a relentless judge, turning the air into a furnace that baked the cheers into the parched ground. Hawk stood at the edge of the dispersing crowd, his leather jacket slung over one shoulder, the weight of the morning's triumph settling into his bones like the first cool sip after a long ride. The council hall doors hung open behind him, spilling out the murmur of hurried conversations and the sharp scent of ink from hastily signed resolutions. Liens dissolved, Harlan's network exposed in a cascade of resignations and promises of audits. Justice, not with thunder, but with the quiet force of truth laid bare. Sarah approached, Lily skipping ahead, the girl's face alight with a joy that chased away the shadows of the past days. "It's over," Sarah said, her voice a blend of relief and wonder, pulling Hawk into a brief, fierce embrace. The ring on his finger caught the light, a silent witness to the vow fulfilled. But endings on the road were never clean cuts. They frayed at the edges, hinting at paths yet untrod. As the crew milled about, securing bikes and exchanging low words of solidarity, a familiar sedan pulled up to the square's curb. Harlan, disheveled and alone, his suit hanging loose like shed skin. He stepped out slowly, hands visible and empty, eyes hollowed by the night's unraveling. The crowd parted instinctively, whispers dying as he approached Hawk, the two men facing off under the flagpoles in different shadow. "You win this round, Ryder," Harlan rasped, his voice stripped of its oil, carrying the faint tremor of a man staring into his own abyss. But Dusthaven's got layers. Elias poked at him too, thought he could fix it all with his hero talk. Hawk met his gaze steadily, the wind tugging at his hair, carrying scents of dust and distant rain. "He did fix some. Pass the torch. We're not poking. We're burning the rot clean." Harlan's laugh was bitter, short-lived, as he glanced at Sarah and Lily, the girl clutching a crumpled council paper like a trophy. "For her sake, maybe. But watch your back. The sheriff's cleaning house. But not all corners." He turned away, sedan door slamming with finality, tires kicking up gravel as he vanished into the haze. Marcus sidled up, his bulk a reassuring presence. "Bluff or threat?" Hawk shook his head, the ring's engraving pressing into his palm as he clenched his fist. "Both, but we've got eyes now. The crew stays vigilant." Loyalty wasn't a one-ride fix. It was the engine that kept turning, forging family from the wreckage of broken systems. Sarah gathered Lily close, the trio walking toward the bikes parked in a gleaming row, chrome reflecting the sky's deepening blue. Townsfolk nodded as they passed. The mechanic offering a thumbs up, the waitress pressing a paper bag of fresh pie into Sarah's hands, her smile warm with shared victory. "Elias would be proud," she said softly to Hawk, the words landing like balm on old scars. He mounted his bike, the familiar creak of leather and the cool grip of handlebars grounding him, Lily waving from behind her mother on the spare ride. "You stepped on it, mister!" the girl called, her whisper from days ago, now a shout of delight. Hawk's throat tightened, but this time with a fullness he hadn't known in years, the redemption of a promise not just kept, but lived. The convoy formed up, engines igniting in a staggered roar that echoed off the square's buildings, a farewell salute to the shadows they'd pierced. They rode slow through Dusthaven's main drag, windows opening in trailers and shops, faces peering out with quiet gratitude. The air hummed with the scent of cooling metal and blooming creosote, the road ahead untwisting into open highway where the horizon promised no more hidden snares. Hawk led, wind whipping his face, thoughts drifting to Elias's letters tucked away in his saddlebag, fragments of war stories laced with dreams of a town unbent by greed. He'd failed once, letting grief bury the vow. But now it rose like the sun, illuminating the chosen kin riding in his wake. Marcus's steady flank, Sarah's determined pace, Lily's laughter trailing like a spark. Miles out, they pulled over at a roadside overlook, the river snaking below like a silver vein through the canyon, sunlight dancing on its surface. The crew dismounted, stretching legs and sharing water from canteens, the moment of pause in the endless ride. Sarah sat on a boulder, Lily clambering beside her, pointing at Hawk circling high. "Like you," the girl said to Hawk, her storm cloud eyes clear now, free of fear. He joined them, the stone warm under him, and for the first time words flowed easy. "Your grandpa saved me more than once, taught me a man's worth is in the promises he honors, even when it hurts." Sarah nodded, her hand finding his briefly, a bridge across generations. "He'd say you've honored it twofold, for him and for us." As the sun dipped toward the rim, painting the canyon in fiery hues, Marcus called them back, the crew mounting up with nods and grins. No grand speeches, their bond spoke in the synchronized revs, the formation tight as family. They rolled on, Dusthaven shrinking in the mirrors, but its lessons etched deep. The corruption cracked, but vigilance the true legacy. Hawk felt the ring's weight lighten, not from removal, but from completion. Elias's spirit riding shotgun in the wind's howl. Redemption wasn't an end. It was the fuel for horizons unbound, where loyalty turned strangers into kin, and honor outlasted the dust. Back in the heart of the Iron Promise's distant chapter, words spread like wildfire through veteran halls and midnight runs, tales of the biker who stepped up for a brother's blood, dismantling shadows with truth's blade. Hawk's crew grew, drawing wanderers with their own buried vows, the patch a beacon for the lost. Sarah and Lily settled into a rhythm unthreatened. The trailer park, blooming with small repairs, funded by the council's restitution. Lily's drawings adorning walls as reminders of guardians real and remembered. Occasional letters arrived from Dusthaven, updates from Thomas. Harlan faded into obscurity, the town exhaling into tentative renewal. Years blurred like highway stripes, but the ring remained, polished by time and touch, a talisman against forgetting. Hawk rode on, leading runs that wove protection through forgotten corners, each mile a tribute to the promise that had pulled him from silence. In quiet moments, under starlit skies, he'd hear Lily's whisper anew, not as echo, but as living fire, the vow stepped upon, unbreakable, the road called eternal, but family, chosen and fierce, rode beside, justice's quiet thunder rolling forever forward. If this tale of promises reclaimed has touched your road, hit that subscribe button and join the ride. We've got more stories of honor waiting in the dust. Thanks for riding with us.